This is our regular city council meeting for May 10th. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? And Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez is not here. Councilmember Friedman.
Here.
Councilmember Sneddon.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Harmon.
Here.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez, also not here. Councilmember Jordan.
Here.
Mayor Rouse.
Here. And you have an item to read?
Ceremonial item number 1, Community Action Month, May 2022.
Hi there. It's Community Action Month, May 2022. It's to Communify of Santa Barbara County in honor of its 55th anniversary. Whereas Communify, Communify, part of the nationwide Community Action Network, has made essential contributions to individuals and families across the United States by creating economic opportunities and strengthening communities. And whereas Communify, formerly Community Action Commission, was incorporated in May 1967 as a private nonprofit organization devoted to creating opportunities for Santa Barbara families to achieve economic stability as an essential aspect of enabling and enhancing a stronger and more resilient Santa Barbara County. And whereas since its inception, Communify has continued to provide vital services for the most vulnerable members of our community, expand its programs, and add locations throughout Santa Barbara County to make assistance available to all our neighbors who might need it. And whereas Communify serves thousands of low-income residents of all ages, offers prenatal services for pregnant women, high-quality child care, and preschool programs for children through age 5, and medical, dental, and mental health screenings, parenting education workshops, mentoring and tutoring programs for teens, job training programs, home energy programs to reduce utility expenses, weatherization services, and programs to keep our seniors safe in their homes. And whereas Communify has improved countless lives and continues to work towards ending poverty in Santa Barbara County, therefore I, Randy Rouse, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Santa Barbara, do hereby declare the month of May 2022 as Community Action Month and congratulate Communify on its milestone 55th anniversary. I thank its directors, board, staff, and volunteers for their much appreciated contributions to the Santa Barbara community. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Rouse, and good afternoon, council members. My name is Patricia Keelan. I'm CEO for Communify. And I want to thank you all so much for this recognition today. Of course, as you just heard, May is a very significant month for Communify. First, it is National Community Action Month, celebrating the birth of community action in 1964, which created a network of more than 1,000 organizations in every county across the United States, dedicated to addressing the causes and conditions of poverty. 1964 also marked the beginning of the Head Start program, an early education model for preschoolers and their parents that was designed to help break the cycle of intergenerational poverty in America. May is also important because it marks Communify's 55 years of service to Santa Barbara County. Our story began in 1967 when a county task force called the Community Action Commission incorporated as a nonprofit organization and opened the first Head Start Center here in Santa Barbara. Since then, we have rebranded as Communify and have grown to provide 17 different programs, including Head Start services in 24 different early education centers throughout the county, including here in Santa Barbara. Every year, Communify serves over 8,000 disadvantaged children, teens, families, and seniors. providing services that educate and support them on their personal journey to becoming economically stable and self-sufficient. In addition to early education, we provide tutoring, mentoring, and behavioral wellness services, help to make homes more energy efficient, assist with rent and utility bills, promote positive youth development, and manage Santa Barbara County's 211 information and referral helpline. Of course, we could only do all of that with the support of the City of Santa Barbara and other partners, including our donors, the nonprofit network, funders, and community supporters. On behalf of our Board of Directors and staff, we want to thank you for helping us to celebrate 55 years of service to Santa Barbara County, and we're looking forward to the next 55. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very good. Madam Administrator, are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Mayor Rouse.
Okay, very good. We'll go to public comment. I have two speakers present. May I start with DJ Johnson? You have 3 minutes.
Thanks, Mayor Rouse, and thanks, City Council members, for having me. My name is DJ Johnson. I serve as a pastor at Ocean Hills Covenant Church, which recently bought a building just a block or two away from you guys, actually. I'm here simply to report/celebrate an event we had the other night on Friday night that we kind of called the City and Faith Leader Summit on Homelessness, and we got a bunch of people together in a room to address the homelessness crisis here in Santa Barbara and to ask the question, what is each of us doing about it? So I would just like to report that it was a resounding success. We had about 15 different faith communities present, several leaders from each of those communities. Councilmember Gutierrez was present along with Liz Stotts. So we had our city representatives there, and we had about 8 to 10 city partners, meaning CityNet, SB Act, city partners who have been working with you guys to address homelessness here in Santa Barbara. And so with all these people in the room, the 3 words that I kind of walked away with thinking of were awareness, appreciation, and collaboration. Awareness, meaning people were just made aware of what you all as the city are doing to address homelessness. Appreciation, mutual appreciation, hopefully from the city, to find out what faith leaders are doing to address this crisis, and obviously us too, to appreciate what you guys are all doing to address this crisis as well. And finally, collaboration. Several new faith leaders stepped in to say, we actually can start to do this, to partner with people who are already doing good work in Santa Barbara and doing our part to address it too. And so I just want to say thank you for letting us use the Gerhard Room. Thank you, Councilmember Gutierrez, for helping organize us. Thank you to Liz Stotts as well. And it really is making a difference. And I think meeting by meeting, we'll continue to see more collaboration, more partnership in this direction. I want to end this way. There's a verse in the Bible, Jeremiah chapter 29. There's a verse in that chapter where the prophet addresses the people of God in the city. And he says, seek the welfare of the city. Pray for the welfare of the city, for in its welfare, you will find your welfare. And surely, I think as we pray and seek the welfare of the city as faith leaders, we will continue to find our welfare in finding the city's welfare. So thank you for partnering with us in that way. And it was a great meeting, so appreciate everything you did to make that happen. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Howard Green is our next speaker.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and council members. I am the city's appointed representative to the Central Coast Commission for Senior Citizens. We act as the area agency for aging in distributing some state and federal monies, including to Communify, who does home repairs, and we've had a good past relationship with them for managing congruent meals here in Santa Barbara. I'm here today because we all are aware that at some point the pandemic exceptions are going to go away, and the funding that we have had for congregate meals has been used for people to have meals at home that aren't now qualified, or say, not in the future, qualified to get this service. So I'm here principally because we need to reestablish both a subcontractor to do this and use of some city facilities. Senior centers are used, recreation centers can be used. I believe that some of the housing organizations under your housing organization have taken advantage of the congruent meals, which is allowed by the law. So I appear today principally to alert you to this potential coming problem as you think about the city reopening everything. That's one of the things that'll be on the list. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Green.
Oh, by the way, I should apologize for a couple weeks ago trying to get this message when I was on a bus, and that wasn't very good. This is the program, the funding for it a couple of years ago was somewhat less than the cost that the communicate bore of the it makes it awkward, of course, if we can't supply the full funding. There is a mention in here of some expected local grant money also. So be aware, you all, particularly two of your districts, have particular need for this, and I hope that we can work something out. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there speakers from online for general public comment?
There are no further comments.
Okay, very good. We'll then move to the consent calendar. Do you have some items to read?
There are 3 items to read. Item number 3, introduction of an ordinance for assignment and assumption of lease agreement number 23,328 from Waterfront Food Group LLC to co-owners Ms. Amy Rose, Mr. Brian Dimini, and Mr. Dennis Longaberg for the restaurant space located at 113 Harbor Way. Recommendation that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara authorizing the waterfront director to execute, subject to approval, as to form by the city attorney, the consent to assignment and assumption of lease agreement number 23,328 from Waterfront Food Group LLC to co-owners as Ms. Amy Rose, Mr. Brian Dimini, and Mr. Dennis Longaberger for the restaurant space located at 113 Harbor Way, commencing upon the effective date of the enabling ordinances. Item number 4, introduction of an ordinance for assignment and assumption of lease agreement number 27,073 for Waterfront Food Group LLC to co-owners Ms. Amy Rose, Mr. Brian Dimini, and Mr. Dennis Longaberger for the restaurant space located at 113 Harbor Way. Recommendation that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara authorizing the waterfront director to execute, subject to approval as to form by the city attorney, the consent to assignment and assumption of lease agreement number 27,073 from Waterfront Food Group LLC to co-owners Ms. Amy Rose, Mr. Brian Dimini, and Mr. Dennis Longaberger for the restaurant space located at 113 Harbor Way, commencing upon the effective date of the enabling ordinance. Item number 5, adoption of resolution regarding appropriations for the El Estero Water Resource Center Electrical Distribution Renewal Project and contract for pre-bid construction management services and constructability review. Recommendation that Council A authorize the Public Works Director to execute a city professional services contract with Miaga Engineering Group in the amount of $235,626 for pre-bid construction management services and constructability review for the El Estero Water Resource Center Electrical Distribution Renewal Project, and authorize the Public Works Director to approve expenditures of up to $22,563 for extra services that may result from necessary changes in the scope of work. And B, adopt a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending Resolution Number 21045, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2022 to allocate available appropriations for the El Estero Water Resource Center Electrical Distribution Renewal Project. And that's it.
Thank you very much. Does anyone need to pull anything off the consent calendar? Do we have any public comment for consent calendar?
Mr. Mayor, we do not have any public comment.
Very good. I'll entertain a motion for this consent calendar.
So move.
Moved by Friedman,
Second.
second by Sneddon. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Motion by Freeman, seconded by Sneddon. Councilmember Alejandro Gutierrez is absent. Councilmember Friedman?
Yes.
Councilmember Sneddon?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Harmon?
Yes.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez?
Aye.
Councilmember Jordan?
Yes.
Mayor Rouse?
Aye. Very good. Passes unanimously. May we have a report from the Finance Committee?
Today, we met at the Finance Committee and reviewed the enterprise fund fee adjustments and just received the report, and those will be forwarded on to full council during budget deliberations.
Thank you. And the Ordinance Committee?
Yes, thank you. We met today and unanimously approved conversion of 400 Anacapa Street to a two-way, and that will be coming to council in approximately 2 weeks.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you read the next item, please?
Item number 11, adoption of resolution regarding appropriations for contract for construction of fiscal year 2022 A pavement maintenance project and contract for design of fiscal year 2023 pavement maintenance projects. Recommendation that Council D adopt a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara amending resolution number 21-045, adopting the budget for fiscal year 2022 to appropriate reserves from pavement maintenance contracts.
Very good. Mr. Dewey.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor Rouse, council members. I'm Jim Dewey, the Streets Operations and Infrastructure Manager. Today with me, I have Laura Yanez, our principal civil engineer, who engineers a lot of the pavement maintenance projects. I also have Derek Bailey, our city traffic engineer, available for questions after the presentation is over. So I'd like to present the highlights of our pavement maintenance program for this year. But the actual item that we're bringing before council is asking for approval for construction contracts for the 2022A pavement maintenance project, which includes our slurry seal projects, and also a contract for the design of our fiscal year 2023 pavement maintenance projects. So with that, I'd like to talk about our very productive pavement maintenance program for the last 3 years. So since the adoption of Measure C, we've received substantial additional funding that we did not have to maintain our city streets and right-of-way infrastructure. So the passage of Measure C was a game changer as far as we were concerned. It really enabled us to address a lot of deferred maintenance backlog, and I'm sure that anyone who drives the streets has seen some of the improvements that have been happening with that. Our pavement maintenance program is funded through not only Measure C, but also through Measure A, which is a half-cent county-wide sales tax, SB1, which is a portion of gas tax that was recently passed statewide. Our gas taxes, utility users taxes also provide some of that funding. But with that, we bring in a substantial amount of grant funding through active transportation projects, the highway safety improvement projects, the highway bridge projects, and all of these contribute towards not only safety in the public right-of-way and right-of-way improvements, but they all lend themselves also to the improvement of our maintenance. So the city, within the city, we have 145 miles of city streets that need to be maintained, as well as 286 miles of sidewalks and all the related curb, gutter, and access ramps that go with that. So during the last 3 years, we've been able to maintain 314 city blocks. And what I mean by maintain is either overlaid or provided surface treatments like slurry seal for those streets. We've also installed or retrofitted 379 curb ramps, which adds to accessibility in the public right-of-way. And we've replaced or added 186,000 square feet of sidewalk. So this map shows, illustrates our work over the past 3 years, as well as the work that's planned for fiscal year '23. And so this includes the work that the pavement maintenance crew does as part of the streets division, contracted work, contracted overlays, and contracted slurry seal work. And our aim is to try to provide as much of an equal distribution and along with maintaining the priorities that we have within pavement maintenance in order to keep our streets up to the highest standards. But as you can see that everyone is getting part of this love from Measure C. And what is not shown in this map are some of the contributions for our highway safety improvement programs. Like most recently, West Carrillo was paved all the way from Chapala to San Andreas Street, which is not shown on here, as well as significant safety improvements that will allow pedestrian traffic to pass from the lower west side to the west side safely. Okay, with that, I would like to, Ms. Yanez will present our goals and strategies for pavement maintenance.
Thank you, Mr. Dewey, Mayor Rouse, and council members. I'll be going over our current status, the goals and maintenance strategies for our pavement maintenance program. Slide, please. So GASB 34 requires that the city's legislative body adopt a policy setting a minimum PCI. In 2003, the City of Santa Barbara Council adopted a minimum PCI of 60. But really, since 1985, the city has implemented strategic pavement maintenance systems based on proven concepts that it's far more cost-effective to be proactive and maintain our streets rather than allow them to deteriorate to the point that need significant rehabilitation. This proactive methodology proved successful in raising the pavement quality of our streets, such that in 2009, we achieved a PCI rating of 70 or higher. However, as a result of the reduced funding availability and increase in material cost, the overall PCI dropped below a 70 in 2010 and continued to decline until the passing of Measure C in late 2017. The overall condition of the city's road network is currently at an average of a 63 based on the maintenance information entered to date, which is considered to be fair within the at-risk category. At an overall PCI of 63, the city's street network is currently at a critical point where pavement condition begins to deteriorate more rapidly, thus increasing the cost. Yet with additional funding provided by Measure C, the PCI has begun an upward trend since its implementation in 2018. Next slide, please. This slide shows our road conditions as a percentage of the pavement condition index. Currently, as you can see, 32% of our streets are in the excellent or good category. 39 are in the fair category. 19 are considered poor, and 7 are very poor. Again, it's a proven concept that it's far more cost-effective to proactively maintain our streets. So our current strategy is based on a 5-year pavement maintenance cycle with paving priorities being based on funding our most heavily used streets. One thing to note that the prices noted on the slide used to depict our overall cost, so not only construction but also design. Since then, and due to the increases over the last 2 years in oil prices and inflation, these prices are actually reflecting our current construction costs. Next slide, please. This table shows the combination of Measure C programs, which we use to fund our pavement maintenance projects, including overlays, sidewalk access ramps, sidewalk repairs, and the traffic signal maintenance fund. We also use SB1 funds, which all total in about 15, to a total of 15.6 million for FY '22. When the Measure C funding became available in 2018, the city immediately began using these funds and using them towards critical street repairs. And despite the reductions in expenditures due to the pandemic, there was still a significant increase in the amount of expenditures on street maintenance, which again have contributed to the upward trend of our PCI. One of the reasons why you see other Measure C programs on this table is that in addition to our paving efforts, there's a significant amount of concrete improvements and other miscellaneous work that goes into the pavement maintenance projects. Next slide, please. Such work includes the installation of ADA access ramps, sidewalk repairs, conduit upgrades, and installation. This table breaks down the amount of funding being spent exclusively on paving operations versus concrete improvements on the past 7 maintenance projects. So as you can see, on average, there's a 50-50 split between the money spent on paving operations and required concrete improvements. The majority of these concrete improvements address missing or non-compliant ADA ramps as required by ADA, as well as addresses, sidewalk uplifts which can lead to trips and falls, curb and gutter repairs, drainage issues, and traffic signal maintenance. Our goal is to eventually focus all of our funding towards the paving efforts and anticipate that in the next 8 to 10 years, we'll eventually get to that point, given that there's approximately 600 missing ramps throughout the city, and on average, we replace about 80 to 100 per year. So eventually, we'll be able to get to that point where the majority of our funding is dedicated towards the paving efforts and increasing our PCI. Next slide, please. So this graph shows our pavement maintenance software projections, giving the different funding scenarios. Based on significant increases in material cost, inflation being higher than predicted, we need a sustained funding level of 12 million in order to continue that upward trend. The city is currently working on its biannual report, which updates these projections, and it should be ready in the fall. And we'll consider a lot of the situations that we're running into now and the increase in material costs. But as you can see, we expect to reach a PCI of 70 or greater with a commitment of 12 million by FY '28, and it's only greater if we commit 14 million, allowing us to get to that preventative maintenance state, which we wish to achieve. Next slide, please. So our goal is to get to a point where city streets are maintained on a regular basis. This can only be achieved by getting our streets to a preventative maintenance state. The graph on the left shows that it is far more cost-effective to spend $1 on preventative maintenance versus $6 to $10 on rehabilitation. And the graph on the right demonstrates that with a minimum of 14 million dedicated to pavement maintenance construction, a PCI of 82 will be reached by 2035, while also significantly reducing our deferred maintenance. By nearly eliminating our deferred maintenance by 2035 and beyond, the city would be able to address most of the pavement needs throughout our city each year, making this the ideal pavement scenario, which we strive for. Next slide.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Yanez. One of the advantages of having a motivated and skilled staff providing our pavement maintenance is that we're able to provide overlay services at a comparative cost advantage to contracted services. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't need contractors as part of our pavement maintenance program. So we need contractors to perform slurry seal projects and more complicated projects that require civil engineering and grading and other more complicated issues. But right now, our pavement maintenance crew is paving 2/3 of the overall program. So they're contributing a significant amount to our overall pavement maintenance program. So some of the areas that we save over contracted services are in the area of, there's always normal profit built in to contracts. You also need construction management services, inspection services. Change orders are always an issue. We always budget for them. There are always change orders because there's change sometimes in the scope, or there's unforeseen problems that may happen. The streets crew can handle those things very easily on the fly without additional cost. There's also mobilization and traffic control costs that are related to contractors. And these are significant costs if you really look at the cost breakdown. And these are also costs that we don't internalize with the streets crew paving. And the streets crew paving also gives us more flexibility. We're able to, as our priorities change, we're able to very quickly adapt to those changes. We're more nimble. We can change our schedules. We can adjust our schedules to meet emergency paving demands. And so it gives us just a lot of flexibility to have our crews doing this type of work. One of the strategies that we've employed over the last several years is to get our streets crews to move from low-value activities to high-value activities. And a few years back, we spent a significant amount of time doing brush clearing for fire prevention. We also picked up a lot of trash in the public right-of-way, bulky items like mattresses. We performed concrete grinding in order to eliminate uplifts on sidewalks. And all of those could be much more easily and efficiently taken care of by contractors at a lower cost. So we can have the brush clearing done by a landscape maintenance company at a really relatively low cost. The trash cleanups in the right-of-way are being handled through our franchise agreement with Marburg now. And we have a specialized contractor that handles all of our concrete grinding services. And with that, it frees up our crew to be able to focus on the highest value, which is over $1,000 per FTE hour in production based on contractor costs. So also, over time, our streets crew production has gone up. So we've almost doubled production over last year. And this is the result of just having the crew, a more trained, more seasoned crew, and them gaining experience in these activities. And we've also added a production paver and a lot of different production paving equipment. So we have two paving crews now, what we call our ARC crew, which is the asphalt repair crew. They handle paving of smaller roads and deep lift repairs. And then we have our production paving crew, which handles all of our other overlay work. I also want to put in a plug for our meet and greet for Public Works Week. That'll be held out at De La Guerra Plaza, right out there from 11 to 2 p.m. before council. We're going to have our production paver out there and one of our big rollers. There'll be some streets crew out there that can take you up and get your picture taken in there, and it should be a lot of fun. It's open to the public. So we really like to show off some of this stuff that we are putting into work. Changing gears a little bit, we've also done a lot of safety improvements throughout the city during the last 3 years. We've improved the 10 crosswalks with safety features. We've made the crosswalks more walkable with shorter and more square passages, and along with access ramps to improve accessibility. We've put in 10 accessible pedestrian signal systems and we've also installed 123 energy efficient LED streetlights throughout town, and installed 8 new pedestrian activated flashers that are associated with other crosswalks around town. And so a lot of these projects do not even use Measure C funds, and they do also contribute to our paving effort, like the West Downtown Carrillo lighting and signal upgrades. But also our ATP projects like the Las Positas MODOC multi-use path also included a number of these projects, and our streets crew was able to pave Las Positas Road in conjunction with that project. So there's a lot of funding that comes in that is synergistic to our program, and we try to take advantage of those wherever we can. And so back to the original recommendation, in essence, we're asking for the approval for council to approve a contract for our FY22A slurry seal project with American Asphalt South for $1.2 million, and our pavement maintenance design services for FY23 projects with Flowers and Associates. And with that, we will answer any questions about the recommendation or the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Dewey. Questions from council, Mr. Jordan?
Thank you, Mr. Mary. Mr. Dewey, just one, and that concerns painting. Is that still contracted, and is that why at least I perceive that we finish paving, and then it seems like quite a while until the crosswalks start popping again and the middle lines show up?
Councilmember Jordan, I think Derek Bailey would like to answer that.
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Jordan. Yeah, so there's kind of two aspects of it. If you're asking how soon after a paving project does the striping take place, we typically wait 3 to 4 weeks just to let some of the oils bleed off so it doesn't track over the nice striping. We don't want it to be dark right away. But in terms of keeping striping fresh, the last few years we've moved from painting to a product called thermoplastic. And we used to use paint. It was a little bit higher quality than you would use on the walls of your house, but it would still wear off quite quickly and it required very frequent maintenance. We've moved to thermoplastic. It's an extrusion, so it starts off as a powder, it's superheated, it comes out as a paste. It wears much slower, it lasts a really long time. So what you're still seeing around town though is the remnants of the old painted crosswalks as we transition from paint to thermoplastic.
Okay. And so I would have asked that question too, but really the first one, so there's actually a required wait time. So when somebody's knocking on me that it's like, it's been done for 3 weeks, what's the deal? The whole street's black at night, can't see anything, don't know where the lanes are, whatever, can't see a crosswalk. There's actually a reason we're waiting a month just to let that bleed off.
Yep. Great example is West Carrillo right now. It was painted paved about 3 weeks ago, and striping will go in next week. And it's just waiting for those.
Ortega is another example of just, I think, sat for a while and has just been finally painted too. That one I see frequently.
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Sneddon?
Thank you, Mayor Baus. I have some positive comments I'll save to the end, but just some questions first. Are there any advancements in paving materials in terms of heat islands or climate change or permeability, anything like that that we might be expecting in the next 10 years?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Sneddon. Yeah, there's a few different products. There's like recycled rubber being used in asphalt. We've found that that's not always a good application on city streets, though. One of the things about using rubber and asphalt is it's really susceptible to deterioration from oil. So there's a lot of parked cars on city streets, and so rubberized asphalt doesn't hold up very well in that. type of application. It works very well on highways because you're not going to have standing vehicles. But some of the research being done right now, like the whole concept of cool asphalt, City of Los Angeles has a big pilot program going on right now, and it's using some alternate materials and even trying to alter the color of the asphalt so much so it doesn't absorb so much heat. We haven't experimented with that yet. I think we'll let the bigger agencies figure that out first, but we're very interested in that as well. But something we have going for us here in town is we have a great urban forest canopy that covers a lot of our streets, and that actually slows deterioration as well because the oils don't bleed out quite as fast under the sun.
Thank you. Be great
Then,
to,
in answer to your other question about permeability, I mean, one of the factors that you know, it's when you allow water to come into the road, it also goes down into the road base, which is really the foundation of any street. So that whole design method would really need to be changed if we were going to put in permeable asphalt into the public right-of-way. However, we do use products that are kind of considered permeable pavement, and we use those in medians and in different areas, like to fill the areas, the surrounds around trees and different things like that. So there are products out there. They're kind of expensive, but right now, just being able to adopt permeability in general, there's a lot of things to overcome.
thank you for that. And it'd be great if we could be looking for opportunities as they come up to pilot or to try things out, or as other agencies have success, that we might borrow some of that. I'm very happy to see Streets in the Hillside on this year's plan. I know I ask every year, and I understand about how the downtown is so much more traveled, and those hillside streets are less traveled, but they still have a lot of impact. And my question is about how you're balancing that over, you mentioned it, but just a little bit more about, those hillside streets that aren't heavily traveled as much as, say, downtown, and working those into the plan. So how do you balance all that throughout the city?
There's a lot of priorities, of course. The priorities are for our more heavily traveled roads, our arterials and collectors, to keep those up to the highest level. And then what we're trying to get to is a point where we can have a 5-year projection roughly of what we're trying to do. So, I mean, there's a lot of roads that we have, a lot of city streets that are around the same, pavement condition. And so, part of it is really being sensitive to the different areas that need pavement, so having a distribution that's fair amongst council districts, but also there's a number of other factors that come into that, and I think Ms. Yanez could speak to some of them.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Sneddon. And I'd like to add that we're also trying to line up our work with water resources.
My next
and
question.
Water
Yes.
main and sewer main replacements. And so ideally, they'll go first, and then we can come in after and have a much better final product. So we're working collaboratively to project our work, let them go first, and then we'll come after, and using that as one of our strategies as well. An example of that is the DSAL Link project, which is currently underway right now, going in on Garden. So once they're done with their work, they'll do the grind and overlay as part of their work, and we're picking off of that in order to do the other side of the street, which would not get taken care of through their project, but again, trying to have a more holistic one city approach and taking care of our streets in the order that makes sense based on
I really
the condition
appreciate
of our
that,
assets.
too, especially as the water main replacement program has stepped up its pace. It's a big driver, and then right after that, people want their roads drivable again. So
There is one other thing to also think about. So we have a number of active transportation projects that are out there that need to be coordinated with paving. Some of them are on the west side, some of them connect the east and the west side. And so there are a little bit of delays in there to coordinate those projects.
thank you. Well, the streets are just beautiful, so thank you.
Mr. Friedman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you pull up slide 12? Just wanted a clarification. question on that slide. So just so I understand this correctly, we're already proposing 14 million, so if we maintain the level of funding we have through Measure C, then we'll, just a few years, get up to that green. But if we decrease it, then we would start to go down back to the 64, to that red line.
That's correct, Councilmember Freeman. Also, these are reflected in today's dollars, so that needs to be bared in mind.
So we'll go up, yeah, because it was a little confusing because we're on the red and it showed the red going down with the 14, so just wanted to make that clarification. But if we continue on the track that we're going, thanks to Measure C, then we should be able to get to that green pretty quickly, in government terms, I guess. So, and then if you could pull up slide 15. And again, just a clarification, and I'm not sure, Mr. Dewey or Ms. Bjork, you can answer this, but this is our in-house crew where I understand it, that where the savings result in more crew paving, but the item today is for contracting out, as I understand it. And so the question is, if we're doing it in-house, why are we contracting it out if there's savings?
Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Friedman, I will turn it over to Mr. Dewey to answer that in more detail, but I do believe that we do not count, at least we had not historically counted some of our more fixed costs, which we included in our in-house costs, because we would have those either way. So we're going to have certain expenses, and I don't know, because previously, because those were fixed costs, we had not included those in our external work, and I assume, Mr. Dewey, that that's still your calculation, or have you changed that?
Well, I mean, to answer your question directly, why are we coming to council to award a construction project? This is for slurry seal. We're not set up for slurry seal with the crew paving program. Also, there are a number of instances where the timelines involved with the delivery of a project and the complexity of the traffic control and other grading and engineering issues, it's more suited for a contractor. So, you know, it's a balance. I mean, definitely the work that the crews provide is we get a lot of bang for our bucks. But with that, we will always have a certain amount of contracted services.
And so the contracting that we're talking is the level of work and is different than what the crews paving do, because they're specialty jobs, as I'm understanding now, specialty jobs where there's certain one-time costs or capital costs for the machines and everything that we'd be looking at. It's just the slide, I was just trying to understand it more. I think I do now, so.
Yeah, if you remember the Mission Street paving project, and what did we call that project? Mission Possible. It was an extremely difficult and a coordinated effort that had a lot of engineering built into it and a lot of grading systems and concrete improvements, and everything had to go in within a certain period of time. That's the kind of project that's more suitable for contracted services. And another thing, I think you were asking this behind the scenes, that when we consider the cost of our crews, we really consider their labor cost as sunk costs because they're going to be here anyway. So, but we do include the cost of all the equipment, all the materials, all of the other services, and everything that it takes to maintain the program.
Thank you, and I appreciate all the work that our crew is doing in our public works. I mean, it's just amazing what Measure C has been able to afford us in terms of upgrading our infrastructure. So I appreciate all your work and all our employees' work on this.
Thank you.
Mr. Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does any of this apply to sidewalk improvement?
Yeah, as mentioned, Councilmember Gutierrez, we take our pavement projects contain a significant amount of concrete improvements, sidewalk access ramps, and replacement of uplifted sidewalks as well. So typically not new sidewalk infill, but more of the trip and fall repairs and those types of projects.
So what is the process in order to get a new sidewalk implemented?
Typically, we install new sidewalks with grant funding, since they typically require a higher level of design and coordination with utilities, property owners. There's a significant amount of work that goes into putting in new sidewalks compared to repairs. And so that's why we typically mostly include repairs in our pavement maintenance projects.
And Mayor Rouse, Councilmember Gutierrez, I will add that if in neighborhoods, especially developed neighborhoods where there are not sidewalks, frequently there's a reason there wasn't a sidewalk constructed, that there's some underlying reason, like a narrow street where you would be trading off parking for sidewalk access, or where you've got a steep slope and you need a retaining wall. Not always the case. You can use San Roque as an example where it was designed and the neighbors like it like that, at least currently, without sidewalks. But in a lot of our infill areas, we really look carefully at whether the lack of sidewalk is truly preventing access and what it will do to the community in terms of other trade-offs, like, and particularly parking. Because if you're using the area that needs to take a sidewalk for parking and you put a sidewalk in, you then are creating a different problem.
Okay. In my district in particular, since I've been elected, there have been quite a few residents in specific parts of the neighborhoods that have been asking for sidewalks, but I understand that it's pretty costly and design intensive, so I don't know if there's some other way we can try to get those areas looked at for consideration.
I would say your district in particular is one where I think we would need to come up with a community process, because you may have one resident who wants a sidewalk on their block and the remaining 8 or 9 would lose parking. So I think we would need to come up with, where we're doing a trade-off such as that, we really need to have a different approach to addressing whether or not it's generally wanted by the residents or wanted by 1 or 2 of the residents. And so that is certainly something that we can take a look at in terms of coming up with a threshold. Perhaps if we get 75 or 80% support from a block, that's sufficient. But I think we would just be creating different set of problems that you'd hear about if we went forward based on the one-off requests that we sometimes do get.
Okay, yeah, I'd appreciate if we have a separate meeting, maybe just you and I, to discuss that. Thank you.
Okay, so a question I had is something we get all the time from the public is scheduling and, notification and whatnot, as well as requests or maybe a major map overlay of districts where you're planning to do things and why. Does that exist, and does the public have access to it, and how do we let the public know what's going to happen and when they could anticipate their particular section being worked on?
That's a good question, Mayor Rouse. And we're working on it. But right now, we're trying to put together a full 5 years of pavement maintenance projects. And then the first 2 years of that are the ones that become more solidified, of course, the first year becomes really solid right when we're about to roll it out. So, our goal is to say that, within 5 years that, these particular streets have a very high probability of being touched. And, our goal also is to have some sort of mechanism where we can, display this on a map or at least get it out to the public so they know, because we get inquiries about this all the time. Of course, we also have changing priorities, shifting priorities as this rolls out. And so sometimes when you promise like on a particular year or say that, well, it looks like we could probably do it on this year, when it doesn't happen, people sometimes are disappointed. But it is our goal to have something like that. And really the farthest we can really go out for something like that is about 5 years. But we should, eventually start making enough progress where we're looping back through the whole city street system. At that point, we'll have a pretty good idea. I mean, once the streets have been brought up to a minimum level of a 60 PCI, then we'll be a lot more accurate as far as, our overall pavement program is concerned. Concerning getting the word out to people, I mean, we just use all the standard mechanisms we do, you know, city news and brief, getting it out to KEYT where we can, or the local news agencies, providing door hangers, providing mailers, all of that stuff is done. You know, we're trying to also integrate all those different activities into the streets paving part too, not just the contracted paving. So I hope that answers some of your
Yeah,
questions.
it does. And I mean, another question would just basically how we, oftentimes the barricade company is different than the actual paving contractor, and sometimes that communication seems to not work out. I just remember from my days in being in business. So has that been something that's been a matter of discussion in terms of coordinating when a barricade, for example, may set up for 3 days in advance and then the project is either moved or rescheduled, doesn't happen. But in the meantime, you certainly have the disruption of traffic, parking, et cetera, in there. So is that something that is discussed internally?
Yes, it is. We discuss that all the time, and it's always, you know, it's like, it's always a gotcha, you know. Things change a lot of, you know, when you're in the middle of a construction project, and our aim is to get, you know, timely information out there. The most timely information that we can get is web-driven. And so we want to try to, as we roll out our new web presence throughout the city, we want to integrate a lot of the features that'll be included in that so we can get it out to the public. And, you know, we're just wrapping our minds around it too.
Thank you very much. All right, very good. Do we have any public comment?
Mr. Mayor, yes, we have one public comment on Zoom. Daryl Sheck. Okay, Daryl Sheck, you may unmute yourself and begin your comment.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse and Council. My name's Daryl Sheck, Executive Director of SEIU Local 620, representing many of your employees here at the city, and I'm gratified to hear that internal city crews are so proficient at paving and asphalt maintenance. And I'm here to speak to item number 11, which proposes 3 different contracts for pavement maintenance contractors for asphalt maintenance. And respectfully, our members may be able to perform some, if not all, of this work. They can actually do slurry seal. It's just that there's so much paving going on at the city, it's not worth their time because they have to go do all the paving that's out there. So I guess I'm a little bit confused as to why that money's not being spent more on paving rather than slurry seal, because slurry seal just kind of slaps a Band-Aid on the road that eventually has to be dug out and repaved anyway. So my understanding is our street crews are so proficient at this work that they are actually in turn contracted out to the city of Goleta. In particular, these contracts are millions of dollars of work that could be potentially performed by your current staff, or if not current staff and you needed to hire more staff, then they could certainly hire more staff. You've asked us to find you savings. We're diligently pointing out options as we see them. And I think it's ironic that the good work of city employees that are our members is being used to hire contractors to contract work away from them. And I just want to say thank you for your time.
All right, very good. Any further public comment?
There's no further comment.
Very good. So it's back to the council for comment. Mr. Jordan.
I'll move the staff recommendation, and then I just have a comment before somebody wants to go into that. And it's just kind of off on a tangent. You guys may have heard me talk about children in the household before, but you guys have been in our neighborhood last year, I think, with paving, and there is a tangible face of the city difference to our street paving crew than faceless, nameless people coming in from wherever. They are, you know, part of our community that live here, however you define here right now, but just the general friendliness and availability and playing with kids who are running out there to see equipment while the work's going on, kind of thing, and engagement back and forth with the property owners is something that's really cool. I don't know how you replicate that in this world of economics and everything, but that particular component of what we do when we do pave is something really to wave a flag about and point to as a success. So just want to thank that crew. I know they're not in here today. It's the crew above the crew, but they're just such a pleasure to work with in a neighborhood, and I've heard that over and over again from neighbors as they work their way around through the neighborhood too. So I want to thank you for that, and I will move the staff recommendation.
And just for clarification, you're moving A, B, C, and D?
I'm looking at just bullets on my page, so the 4 bullets, yep.
Yeah, okay, very good. And do we have a second? We have a second from Ms. Sneddon. And Ms. Sneddon, you're up for comment.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. So just a few comments here. Thank you for looping the hillside in. I know you always have had that on your plan, but seeing it on an actual map and balancing that with all of the city needs is really important. I'm looking forward to that 5-year plan and having it be available to the public as well. It will help all of us, I think, understand how those priorities are set. I really want to thank you and commend you for the in-house paving crew. I think that took a while to set up and an investment, and it's really paying off, and I'm sure that you're very carefully balancing how to best utilize that in-house crew, and particularly, as you mentioned too, with the high impact and the high value activities and balancing that out. So keeping that in-house, I think, is morale booster, and it's also really efficient, and they do beautiful work. So I'm really proud of that. I'd like to also keep looking for ways to improve the environmental quality of the paving materials. I'm sure you're doing that, but just wanted to keep that in the focus. Also, just some notable projects, the Las Positas project and the Mission Street, Mission Impossible, really beautiful projects and enjoyable to drive on. I mean, those were quickly done, relatively, and a real benefit to the public. Really noticing paving and crosswalk improvements throughout the city. Many of our residents have, and especially in the last couple of years, really stepped up, and it's very noticeable. I've been a fan of quality paving and slurry seals for a long time. It's not an uncommon activity in our family to go to other communities and check out slurry seals. And I'm very proud of the work that you do, and it's been commented to me about what quality work the city does, and that's particularly proud of that. And I'm really looking forward to the Public Works meet and greet, and just thank you for the work that you do.
Any further comment from council? Okay, well, as somebody famous quoted at the State of the City address, Public Works has been knocking it out of the park. Oh, and that was me, actually, wasn't it? I will like a roll call vote, please.
We have a motion from,
1 moment, please.
I'm sorry, Honorable Mayor, maybe I missed it. I didn't hear a second.
We did get a second from Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you.
we have a motion by Jordan, seconded by Sneddon to approve the recommended actions. Councilmember Friedman?
Yes.
Councilmember Sneddon?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Harmon?
Yes.
Councilmember Oscar Gutierrez?
Aye.
Councilmember Jordan?
Yes.
Mayor Rouse?
Aye, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And thank you to Public Works. We have another item to read. Madam Clerk?
Item 12, update on Santa Barbara County Association of Governments Broadband Strategic Plan.
Mr. Handel.
Good afternoon, Mayor Rouse, members of the City Council. I'm Adam Hendel, Principal Engineer in the Public Works Department, and I am here today to introduce a team associated with the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments and the Broadband Consortium of the Pacific Coast, or BCPC, to give you an update and share some information on the Broadband Strategic Plan. So with that, whoever would like to come up.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse and council members, and Adam. It's been a pleasure working with Adam throughout this process, but SBCAG has been tasked with developing a broadband strategic plan for the region. I guess let me step back. My name's Mike Becker. I'm the Director of Planning at SBCAG. So SBCAG has been tasked by its board to develop a broadband strategic plan for the region. Earlier this year, or late last year, our executive director came around to all the city councils in the region to get an agreement, and each city, all 8 cities, plus the county, have agreed to provide a portion of their COVID relief funds from the federal government to SBCAG to perform this work. SBCAG contracted with the Broadband Consortium of the Pacific Coast to do the work, and it's on a very aggressive schedule, and that's for a reason. It's to align with the availability of funding to actually make improvements to implement this plan. And we expect to have the plan done roughly October, November at the latest. We wrote all our contracts to expire at the end of the year, and there's too many to go back and redo them. So it will be done by the end of the year for sure. And it'll position the region to capitalize on the funding that's becoming available from the state and federal governments to actually have real-world improvements to broadband in the region. And I will say, we've been going around, we have a series, I believe, 12 public workshops, panel presentations. There's one coming up in the city of Santa Barbara that I'm sure Maria will touch on. And we've had a few so far, and they've been very interesting. We get to hear of the issues of the education sector, the healthcare sector, the business sector, and all of the problems that they experience with broadband internet access and all the Band-Aids that they're putting on to try and solve it. So we're here to try and learn from all that and see if we can find a comprehensive solution and to work to implement it over the long term. But with that, we have our team here, Maria Kelly and Bill Simmons of the Broadband Consortium. And Maria will be providing the update today, then we can all answer questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon. Thanks for having us here. My name is Maria Kelly, and I am the project coordinator from the Broadband Consortium of the Pacific Coast. I'm contracted with the Economic Development Collaborative out of Ventura, and the BCPC is an initiative that covers Santa Barbara, Ventura, and San Luis Obispo counties. So we're really working on broadband alignment. Thanks, Adam. So what I'm going to cover on briefly today is the Broadband for All. That's why we're doing this work. In addition to Broadband for All, the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, but mostly California Broadband for All is what this project's aligning under. Timeline, project outcomes, a little bit about our speed testing, and an overview, data snapshot of where we were when I submitted this PowerPoint about a month or so ago. And then for your consideration as you move forward and determine policies, and I think there's going to be a great conversation there as well. So why Broadband for All right now? In December of 2020, the governor signed the executive order regarding Broadband for All, requiring actually it was an action plan. There were significant subsequent legislation that came through in early 2021. All of this activity has been spurred on by COVID. It's not that broadband hasn't been discussed for the last decade plus, but the connectivity became a huge issue when COVID daylighted it. It's going to continue to be an issue. This isn't something that's just going to go away. So I just highlighted some significant funding, and we're keeping in mind that this is going to be funding year over year for many, many years, because it's going to take quite some time to achieve internet access for all. Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act funding is also going to be a significant funding source that will be routed through the state as well. But there's going to be funding there for grants, data maps, deployment. And I really want to draw your attention to this digital equity piece, because digital equity is something that the state and federal governments are taking very seriously. So while we are talking about infrastructure, we're talking about infrastructure because we're trying to close the digital divide, because that has gotten a little bit too big and it continues to exponentially grow. Next slide, please. This is the general timeline, and as Mr. Becker said, it is very aggressive, but we are on track. Again, we're right around March, April. We've moved into May and June work. We are in our outreach. We are working on drafting our outline for our draft final presentation. Bill and I have been working on that, and we will start scheduling and presenting deliverables, setting up those meetings and presenting to prepare us to present those deliverables to you in September and October. Next slide, please. Project outcomes. Well, it's really important to draw your attention again to the fact that what Santa Barbara County has done is incredibly unique and actually an amazing testament to collaboration. It is a model that we are sharing with other consortium around the state. Having SB-CAG, the CAG or the COG, as the center, and actually having all the cities participating is a phenomenal thing. And the collaborative spirit is beautiful, because broadband doesn't know any borders or boundaries or city boundaries. It just needs to go. So the planning really does need to be at a regional level. These are the project outcomes. the collaborative stakeholder, that's already going to be, that whole engagement piece will be housed at SBCAG. It'll be completed. They'll have a significant stakeholder list that they'll be able to communicate with throughout the life of deployment, infrastructure deployment. We will present a countywide middle mile approach. Uniform policies, I will touch on that towards the end of this again. Why policies are so important to support fiber deployment. And then we are in the process, we'll be sharing with Adam and all the other representatives from the cities, our GIS, open GIS mapping system, where we will be identifying easements, roadways, hopefully even some layers of fiber mapping, so that we know where the gaps are that we need to close. Again, broadband for all means everybody. So we don't reach everybody quite yet. It also means speed, accessibility, and affordability. So those are the 3 targets under Broadband for All. And then municipal last mile priorities and resources. This is really important. And if I may be so bold, you have a unique opportunity, and I'll touch on this at the end. With all your repaving projects, you've got some really unique opportunities to potentially plan for conduit. We are talking about future smart cities and how that's going to be evolving, and it's going to require fiber in the ground. So you've got some really great opportunities coming up in the next few years. Next slide, please. Adam asked for this slide. I don't usually present this to the cities, but so I really wrote it all out, and I don't like to read to slides, so I'm going to go ahead and let you read this. But why this is important is that 4th bullet down. California Broadband for All and federal guidelines are looking to minimum speeds. Previous speeds were at 25.3, I believe. They're now saying that minimum speeds need to be planned to 100 up, 100 down. During our speed test and our data collection, we're finding that there are quite a few providers that are at and or exceeding that speed, but there's still, that's the minimum. And so that's really the future, what we're planning towards. And so these are all the different things that we're talking about when we're talking about speed, and happy to answer any questions, but really wanted to put this together for you so to be future forward thinking. And again, that bottom bullet, we're going to continue to put a demand. It's like an electrical line as you start to draw down off a land and you have brownouts or blackouts. That's basically what's been happening to our broadband. It's a similar type of thing. And so you need to increase the capacity to the point that that draw off that system isn't reducing to the speed to shutting down so that your Zoom's turning off in the middle of the call or your student is education. And we're going to continue to increase our demands on these systems. They're not lessening. They're going to grow over time as we move towards smart city applications, artificial intelligence, all these other things that require certain sorts of high-speed fiber as part of that infrastructure. Next slide, please. So really, just as a data-wide snapshot, and this was from, again, about a month ago, access, broadband for all is access, affordability, speed. Many, and we have not hit the targets where we don't have access. We do know we still have areas of this county that do not have access. In fact, we've been told by the CPUC it's about a little over 6,000 or 7,000 people that do not have access to the internet still. So those will be the first people we target. Most people have access, some people still don't. And we asked this question about perception of speed. And perception is important when you're trying to understand the social aspect of it. So even though it may not be fast, moderate, or slow compared to the service graph on the right, this is the perception of the 945 respondents about a month ago. So there's still people within our communities that are still struggling with that speed piece of it, and that's something that we're going to keep looking at as we're planning future forward. Next slide, please. Again, snapshot. Does the Santa Barbara region need to increase broadband for citizens? Overwhelmingly, yes. Yes, yes, yes. So that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this work. This is why we're planning for the future. And again, we're talking about fiber in the ground. We're technology agnostic. We're talking about the backbone of the infrastructure, which is fiber. Next slide, please. So for local government considerations, as you're having policy discussions, main point of contact, Adam's been fantastic, super engaged, really appreciate him supporting the project and participating with the SBCAG ad hoc committee, as well as other webinars and work product that taking surveys. He's been fantastic and incredibly responsive, and we really appreciate that. We will be reaching back out to him and to the city to talk about policy alignment. Policy alignment is really critical. Dig once, trench, open trench sort of access. Are you discussing broadband in your general plan updates? Are you considering it when you're looking at smart city planning? Are these conversations that you're having? Because if you are having them, you're going to need to be thinking about the infrastructure that's going to support it, and it's fiber, broadband. Again, the GIS mapping partnership, making sure that we're able to continue to build on that map that will be housed at SBCAG, but there will be new data that's going to probably be coming up as we move along. And then participating in, there will be technical assistance grants coming. It keeps getting bumped by month by month. First it was April, then it was May, now it's June, maybe July. Those technical assistance grants are $500,000 per jurisdiction. And we will be working with Adam and others to make sure that Santa Barbara City is prepared to apply for those funding to support this ongoing work effort. If that's decided that that's what we need to do, but I would anticipate that it is. And then really looking, as you're moving forward and thinking about broadband, what are those public-private partnerships? Part of the affordability piece of this conversation is competition. We see some competition in the county. We don't see competition everywhere. And that is an important piece of what we're discussing, which is when we're talking about municipal conduit, finding out if there's companies that are willing to share conduit and increase that competition, or does the public sector step in and actually build and develop and build out this fiber network? Different cities are going to do different things. There's some cities that aren't prepared to do that, but it's a conversation that some, and the county and SBCAG will be having to figure out what's the best path forward. And then again, continuing to participate in the conversations, allow us to provide updates at the end of the project, but also being aware that in the future, next 5, 10, 15 years, this conversation is probably still going to be ongoing until fiber has been built out. So I believe that's the last slide. So happy to answer any questions. I might bring Dr. Simmons up to help as well because I do the presentations, but sometimes he has the technical answers.
Thank you very much. As to the council for questioning, Mr. Jordan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. I got just a couple questions on gaps, I think. So is there any work being done on public spaces access as part of these gaps? So say this plaza, that plaza, this part of town, a strip of a commercial area where you're not sitting at home paying for it, but this is recognizing too that certainly a lot of cultures exhibit that around the world where there's an access point, there's a public area, that type of thing?
Mm-hmm. So that's a great question. It comes up mostly in our conversations with schools and libraries because during COVID, that was the only way that people could stay connected was through those public Wi-Fi access. This project is not necessarily looking at those types of gaps. We're looking at fiber gaps more than anything. So while those could be noted in some of our digital equity conversations that we're having and in digital inclusion, it may or may not be called out in this project.
So I think then probably my next question is that you just answered it there. So if your gaps are more infrastructure, is there nothing being looked at to where there is infrastructure, there's no gap, and your speed test is good an hour of the day, and the other 23 hours your speed test sucks. So it's not a matter of
right.
It's not a matter of a gap existing really. It's about a matter of poor performance on maybe a provider or the infrastructure that's there turning into a gap, even though you can probably get a speed test at certain times of days that looks really good, right?
Correct. I like the way you put that. That's a really good.
But it sucks.
It's hard because again,
Good
it's
that
like
way.
it's that drawdown, right? What are those times a day where we're just drawing it down? So one of the great conversations, telecom is a partner in this. They are our partner. They are going to help be building this infrastructure. So some of our conversations are around equipment, capacity, demand, and all those conversations are ongoing. So there will be an analysis regarding what providers are providing. Again, in different parts of the county, it's different providers, and it'll be good for everybody to see who's doing what, where, and how. We also will be sort of testing some of this, like what's that drawdown or who's getting what service and all those types of things with a professor from UCSB. So we're going to do another little layer of analysis on that and really see if we can dive in and find out. Sometimes it's equipment. Sometimes it's just people not having the equipment that they have, but we do want to make sure that people are getting what they pay for.
Okay. And to that point too, when you mentioned cities planning for the future or incorporating it into budgets, how will we know the future gaps? I mean, do we get a deliverable at the end of this that educates us on what those gaps look like and what we should be looking for?
That's what's so unique about this project is not only you're going to get your gaps, you're going to get everybody's gaps. Because we really are looking at it from a regional, comprehensive perspective. What do we need to plan for? Because it's all going to interconnect, just like the paving and the sewer lines and everything else. It's like we got to be able to know where things are going. So yes, you will have a deliverable. One of them is that GIS map that will be accessible to your staff so that we can see the borders. We will be working on identifying where we could do better on maybe some policy and some permitting conversations. And I just lost my train of thought on that final one.
And then hopefully if you're digging a trench, that you're digging a trench for 50 years from now, not digging a trench for today.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
All right.
Yeah, laying conduit, doing all those types of things. So the gaps are going to change, like they're, but we want to see where we can start closing down, look at it collaboratively and recognizing that we need to look at it as a fourth utility moving into the future, because that's what it is, and that's why these incredible amount of investments are being made.
Thanks, and I especially like your reference to the equity part of that too. That's so true. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Ms. Ned?
Thank you, Mayor Rouse, and thank you for your presentation. Could you clarify for me that we're talking only about fiber optics rather than wireless? And broadband is used sort of in a lot of different ways, so I want to be sure I'm understanding what.
I wish I'd brought my flyer. I have a flyer. So in this project, we really are talking about fiber because fiber is the backbone. You can't deploy necessarily be able to deploy some of those other technologies if you don't have the right fiber or the capacity. And so this is really looking at fiber. Now, hard to reach places, we will look at like the possibility of if we find someone way out in New Cuyama, or there's some little communities back there where fiber maybe in the short term isn't feasible, maybe there is a reason to potentially deploy some Wi-Fi, but we're not talking about that in this project.
Excellent. I think that's excellent news because I think that fiber is the way to go.
But we have
so-
to have it.
Yeah, yes, thank you. So then my questions take sort of a different track on that since I know that, so that's clarified that this is talking about the fiber
Correct.
network. Okay.
Correct.
So on that slide where you showed where people gave responses, I didn't see really any up in the hillsides.
Oh, I
of-
just took a snapshot. That was just, on the final slide, I hope I have SBCAG's website. If we don't, I'll make sure that we get that. SBCAG's website has the needs assessment and the speed test that we're still collecting a lot of data, and then you can click on the results map and it will blow up and it will show you where the response is. The city of Santa Barbara has been incredibly responsive. Very engaged, thank you.
Thank you. And I'll encourage my hillside neighbors to respond because the internet is terrible up there. I mean, just really spotty. So then how should residents participate? Do the stakeholders include residents and where should they go?
So right now, what we call stakeholders are really the core, the anchor institutions and elected officials and staff and public sector or private sector partners in telecom. But everyone is welcome to participate in the needs assessment and the survey. And if they go to the SBCAG website, we now have a link to sign up for a newsletter. Because again, a huge piece of this is education and understanding what it means when we're talking about deployment. It's going to be massive infrastructure, so staying engaged with the help of SBCAG. SBCAG will be really leading those efforts into the future. It's really, really important. So there's an ongoing
Thank you.
opportunity to communicate.
So then if we have residents who want to particularly participate, elected officials would be their voice really for.
I mean, ideally, we have some, like we have the engagement on the 25th at Casa de la Raza. Again, those conversations are really about the why we're doing this, talking about digital equity and inclusion and pulling in healthcare and education and community-based organizations that really serve the population that needs the support and accessibility and adoption of technology. But again, it's at this community level where, it's at that community level where these conversations do need to take place.
Thank you. And then just as a bigger question, what is it going to take to get fiber in the ground? Like, as you know, when we're looking at that, is it funding? Is it this is the first step to that and that's the goal? Or is this assessing whether that is the goal or not?
I feel like we're pretty sure we know fiber needs to go in the ground, so some of it's funding. From a city's perspective, from your perspective, it is ensuring policies make it fairly straightforward. There's an understanding about what it takes to deploy fiber, and maintain it. What types of, the preventative maintenance, like any type of infrastructure. And really understanding, do we have policies here in the city of Santa Barbara that make that prohibitive, that cost then increases so high that it's very difficult to do the deployment and maintenance. So that is part of our conversations as well, is looking at policy alignment. We're looking at a local level, and the state, California Department of Technology, GoBiz, we're all looking at it at the state level as well, so we can really start looking, what do we need to do to support the deployment of this infrastructure? Oh, and thanks, Bill.
One of the interesting things about all of this, matter of fact, last time I was before you was November 16th, and it was by Zoom. It's glad to see you in person. I'm so happy to be here. It's a good question about what does it take to put fiber in the ground, because it really is going to be a public-private collaboration. From the private standpoint, we want to do everything we can do to encourage investment. And so what really happens is competition is being unleashed, and we're seeing a lot of investment here. Cox has always been extremely fiber responsive and in planning in a proactive, innovative way their fiber plant. Frontier's coming in and making fiber investments now. That's all good, and we don't want to stand in the way. On the other hand, they'll be the first to tell you that there's certain places and certain areas that it just doesn't pencil out. It's not a business case there. And that's the big change about right now. Is it doesn't pencil out in certain areas for those companies to go in there and do, and that's where the public-private partnership has got to come in place. Those are the gaps that we're trying to identify and tackle at this point in time. And so there's communities of need, there's places in the outback, if you will, Cuyama, where it's hard to get to, and it's literally $12 million were set aside for Frontier to put a leg from Cuyama down into Santa Maria this last year by the California Public Utilities Commission. Those kinds of projects need to happen not only at the regional level, but in the community level as well. And so the role of municipalities at this point really are about access for all and guaranteeing access for all. And then in those areas where public investment occurs, the maintenance and stewardship of those resources, because they're going to be coming from public dollars for public purposes by the public.
Thank you. And as a follow-up to that, is one of the things being considered, or will there be recommendations on whether we should go independent as our own utility or regionally, or will that be a question that's addressed?
Thank you, Mayor Rouse and Councilmember Sneddon. That is a very good question. As a planner, my job has always been to deliver plans. And what scared me with this is, where does it go after it's done? I don't want to see it get put on a shelf and nobody knows what to do with it. So that's the question I've been kind of throwing my elbow into this whole time. Where does it go? We have to get that question answered. And just yesterday, we have an ad hoc committee of 5 members of our board advised the broadband project, and they asked our executive director to bring an item to the board, so Mayor Rouse will see it eventually, of potentially standing up something within SBCAG. Similar to what we do with Measure A, we have an engineer on staff that helps implement Measure A. It could be something that helps implement broadband. And I will say the city of Santa Barbara, or city of Santa Maria, or the county are big and sophisticated and able to do a lot on their own. That's not the case throughout the entire region. And as Maria said too, the broadband doesn't necessarily care about political boundaries, so it is necessary for a lot of coordination and also a lot of technical assistance. So I'm hopeful that something will happen where SBCAG could stand something up and be the technical resource given whatever level is needed per jurisdiction throughout the region, to work with Adam or whoever, or you go to a city like Buellton where they may have nobody who can help, so then it would be on SBCAG. But yes, more centralized, and that's something that I'm not going to let go unanswered through this process.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's exactly the point of my question, is that how are we actually going to implement it and get it going? And then one more question about the gap analysis. That's a physical analysis of the spaces between fiber optics, or it's a gap in cell service, or what is the gap that's being measured?
Yeah, that has to be one.
The simplest way is the gap in where we're not meeting broadband for all. So is it gap in speeds, gaps in affordability, gap in access? So that's will we identify all of them? We're going to try, but that's a piece of it. And so then that trickles down to, oh, well, then this is infrastructure, this is, so does that answer?
It does.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all.
All right, very good. We have a couple of public speakers. First up is Katie McKay. Thank you very much. And then we have Howard Green.
Today's kind of Mr. Mayor and council members, today's kind of a triple play for me because of the agenda. I'm very, very professionally interested in broadband. I've been in the computer business for a long time, and networking is really important. Something I haven't heard in this entire discussion is the last mile. Fiber ends someplace. Is it going to end in your home? That's a lot of distribution. Is it going to be a cellular tower that serves an area, or is it going to be a cable network hub? I mean, all of those are methods to be used. The latency problem that all of us experience, I think, when watching streaming content is because the internet is jammed at certain points of time. So the design of the protocols even have to be a little bit more tolerant of these transmission gaps. There are fiber, I believe, in Caltrans highway network, in Union Pacific's track, in the PG&E and SCE distribution systems. So again, I'd really like to hear what the final mile ideas are on this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone online to comment?
Yes, we have two speakers, Miriam Lindbeck, afterwards Leslie Winstock. Miriam Lindbeck, you may unmute yourself and begin your comment.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor Rouse and City Council members. It's good to see you again. I'm Miriam Lindbeck, President of Safe Tech SBC, and I truly appreciate this opportunity to speak. I'm very excited about this broadband significant project. The last mile, which our last speaker just brought up, is exactly what I was going to focus on as well, because it is there that it impacts the human at the most intimate level. We know that the wireless industry, hard as it may try, is still a very vulnerable system. It's hackable, both locally and nationally. The speeds are erratic. Often the communications will go down. We know that it is not the most reliable of systems. And the more that speed is required by our users, the smaller the wave, the radio wave has to be, and the smaller the wavelength, the more data it can carry, but the less it can travel. So penetration through walls to get to people on the inside is a real challenge, which they haven't figured out with the 5G networks as yet. 5G itself, as much as we've heard about it, is not ready for deployment for another 7 to 8 years. So if we have fiber optics to the premises, that last mile, we're talking about security, very fast download speeds. We're talking about very, very low vulnerability. We're talking about reliability, much less power consumption. We're also talking about the safety to the environment. So we know that from all the studies, even though industry will definitely fight this, radio waves through our airwaves at the quantity that they are coming in, from satellites to cars to antennas on rooftops, in street lights, on everywhere that we have towers, everywhere that we're putting wireless communications, it's having a significant and deadly impact on our bugs, our birds, our bees, and some very, very vulnerable humans. So the safer we can go, the better we are all off, and we will have a much more reliable service locally, nationally, something that we can grow into over the next century. So let's go with fiber optics to the premises. It may take longer, it may be a little more difficult, but you're not looking at just now, we're looking at least a century out. And we know that 200 megabytes per second is being purchased by 48% of the households now. We've had an increase in usage over 21% annually, and there is actually no slowing down. So I'm in support of fiber optics to the premises, and I thank all of you for your attention and for this huge and significant project. Let's do it right all the way. Thank you.
Last speaker, please.
Leslie Winstock, you may unmute yourself and begin your comment. Leslie, a pop-up screen will show up where you can unmute yourself and begin your comment.
Thank you.
Leslie Winstock?
Yes.
You may unmute yourself and begin your comment.
Yes, thank you. Ditto everything that Miriam just said. Last year, Safe Technology for Santa Barbara County asked to be a stakeholder in the broadband consortium.
Leslie,
yes.
a pop-up screen will show up where you can unmute yourself and begin your comment. Leslie Winstock?
Yes.
You may unmute yourself and begin your comment.
Yes, thank you. Ditto everything that Miriam just said. Last year, Safe Technology for Santa Barbara County asked to be a stakeholder in the broadband consortium.
Leslie,
yes.
a pop-up screen will show up where you can unmute yourself and begin your comment. Leslie Winstock?
Yes.
Unmute yourself and begin your comment.
Yes, thank you. Ditto
Leslie,
everything-
it sounds like your audio is repeating. Could you mute yourself and speak? I'm sorry, mute your audio and begin your comment.
Okay, is this better?
Yes.
I'm sorry, very apologies. Anyway, last year we asked to be a stakeholder several times and received no answer on the issue of the Pacific Broadband Consortia not getting back to us. Their funded mandate by the CPUC is to include all community stakeholders, which would include our group. And we asked for the City Council's help in making sure the funded consortia include Safe Technology for Santa Barbara County. We support providing accessible and universally affordable wired, not wireless broadband to underserved and unserved areas. I have the same question as Miriam and the previous speakers. You know, will this broadband service be wired, especially within the middle and last mile? And some reminders, broadband is for data and internet only under Title I and is not related to making cell phone calls and texts. Calls and texts are regulated by the FCC under Title II. That is what wireless facilities are for. Wireless facilities are not needed for broadband. The best practice is to provide wired internet that is totally affordable and accessible to everyone by a public utility. This is being done successfully in cities and counties around the U.S. Private corporations like Cox unfortunately make it impossible for people who are poor or who have less financial means to have internet. Wired internet is 10,000 times faster than 5G, safer, less
You need to
hackable.
wrap up, please.
Okay, anyway, to summarize, Safe Tech would like the city council's help to be included as a community stakeholder and would like reassurance that the project will be wired to the last mile. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there further speakers?
There are no further speakers.
Okay, I would like to invite Mr. Simmons, Ms. Kelly back up to talk about the last mile question that just came up, if you would, please.
We've talked quite a bit about it today, and we'll talk more about it at this moment. We have avoided certain terms. Broadband is a very complex issue. And so we by design, in terms of making the presentations, when you start talking about last mile, middle mile, and backhaul, those are all elements of the same kind of category of architectures and discussion. We get into details about network design. Let me express last mile. Last mile is exactly what happens from to get it to the threshold and into the home or the business or the residence. It's the final mile, and that's another term that's used equally. We've talked about that some, and we've talked about the fact that we're technology agnostic, whether it is a modem, whether it is wireless, whether it's a cell phone, all of those things, what they all have in common is fiber. We're talking infrastructure here. We're talking about capacity. And so there will be discussions about last mile, and there are going to be important policy discussions about the last mile. But the fiber has got to come first. The infrastructure and capacity has got to come first. The providers have got to be here and come first and be part of this conversation. We're setting the table with all of this. Every city in this county is going to have these discussions. And every city is going to come up with a different solution that's going to be unique to this city. It may surprise you that everything that occurred in the comments that have just occurred, we agree with. And we have a big tent. The invitations are always open. Everybody is welcome. And we are engaged in a process where those comments need to be heard. They need to be considered. This is what your job is all about. And so we're just kind of queuing things up for you to have these discussions when the time comes. But before the time comes, we got to get fiber here. We've got to have capacity here. We've got to have the table set and be ready for those discussions. And what you will do is probably going to be somewhat different than what Santa Maria does. It's going to be uniquely Santa Barbara. And Adam's doing a great job of gathering the data and helping us talk about the Santa Barbara experiences in queuing up for the discussions yet to come.
All right, thanks very much. We'll go back to the council for comment. Ms. Sneddon.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. Well, this is very exciting. I think it's most certainly an equity and accessibility issue. I think many of us have wanted fiber optics for a long time, and this is one conduit way to get there. And when you talk about building capacity, that's what this is about. And I'm understanding that the last mile conversation, I will say for myself, I agree that it should be fiber optics all the way onto the premises. And if I'm understanding right, that will be a more localized decision as that plays out. I just also think this is safer for the high fire areas, better for the environment, more secure, and I'm very excited that we have a framework in place to be looking at this on the larger scale of the county, and how we can be implementing this in the city is something that we'll be working on. So there's not a motion or anything. I just would want to thank you for including us in the conversation and really encouraging the really broad stakeholder input, as you heard today. I'm sure that group would also like to be included in that, but thank you for bringing us into this conversation today.
It's important to know we're not creating a plan. Yes, we are, but it's going to be an SB-CAG plan, and the plan for Santa Barbara is going to be your plan. And so what we're trying to do is get the conversation going and provide all the resources we possibly can. We're funded by the Public Utilities Commission. That money's coming. We're trying to do everything we can do to have you ready for it, for what you want to do with it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Yeah, it's going to be providing equity to a lot of socioeconomic areas that don't necessarily have it. And we said during the pandemic, there were people huddled around the libraries and outside schools trying to hook up internet, get internet. And so this is all a good thing. We don't have an action item on this today. So with that, we'll thank you for the presentation. And we'll move on to council member committee assignment reports. Mr. Friedman.
I think I just have one. I attended the groundbreaking for the Library Plaza with many of you there. It was a great event, many years in the making. Just want to thank our library director, Jessica Cariente, for all her work, and the Library Foundation, in particular, Ann Howard and Lauren Trujillo, as well as all those who are involved in it. It's a much-needed project, and it's going to really transform. It's going to be the center and transform the Historic Arts District when it's done later, hopefully next year. So looking forward to the ribbon cutting.
Thank you. Ms. Snedden.
Thank you, Mayor Rouse. I was very sorry to miss the groundbreaking. That was an exciting library event. The fire department held a virtual town hall this week that was very successful. And we heard that from our fire department also at our last Tuesday meeting. I attended CEC annual event, speakers on climate change, and attended this weekend's Fire Safe Council Wildfire Preparedness Exposition and opening night. And what a really gift to the community is that Fire Safe Council, and they also introduced they have a Black Hawk, a Firehawk, firefighting helicopter that will also be used throughout the county that was unveiled then as well. That's all.
And I attended today the spring luncheon for Moxie, the Children's Museum, and they're doing an amazing job in increasing their numbers about outreaching to all sectors of the community, schools, children, and whatnot. And they're one of our tenants, actually, so Bucky or whatever it is that is. But it's a fabulous facility, looking good, and their development fundraising is going very well. And with that, we stand adjourned. Thank you.